All right, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to cover the beginner documentation for Python. But remember when I said in the previous video, this is just going to be a brief summary of the documentation, and I'm just going to talk about what they're covering in the documentation. So if you run into issues down the road or you have questions that are basic questions, look here first because this will probably give you the answer. If not, send me a question for sure, and I'm happy to help you in any way that I can at any time. So always feel free to send me a question, okay, about anything about Python, all right, and about this course. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Beginner's Guide. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to open this link in a new tab just so I can kind of see it in a different page, okay? So this is the Beginner's Guide to Python. So this is kind of an overview of what Python is. It's free and easy to learn if you know where to start, okay? So, new to Python. So here's a link to a beginner's guide, overview for short explanation of what Python is, okay? And this is taking you to Wikipedia. Or Wiki, sorry, not Wikipedia. So it gives you kind of a clear explanation of what it is. And we talked about this in the previous videos of what it is, but we'll expand on that a little bit here. So some of Python's notable features: uses an elegant syntax, making the programs you write easier to read. I want to emphasize this again. In programming in general, everything is about syntax. So syntax is how the computer reads the program, okay? What do I mean by that? When you type something, let's use this text as an example, okay? This is just text. Syntax is code, all right? And so the code is talking with your computer or your web browser and saying, hey, read this code for me. So the web browser, for this example, would read that and then render that out to your web browser if you're doing web development. Now, if you're doing software development, you would run that in a text editor, or in Python 3.9, their shell operator, or IDLE, which is right here, okay? You can run your code through there, and it will tell you what it is. Now, again, simplicity is the key here. It's extremely easy to write code in Python, okay? Is an easy-to-use language that makes it simple to get your program working. This makes Python ideal for prototype development and other HOC programming tasks without compromising maintainability. Comes with large standard library that supports many common programming tasks, such as connecting to web servers, searching text with regular expressions, reading and modifying files. Python's interactive mode makes it easy to test short snippets of code. There's also a bundled development environment called IDLE, okay, which we're going to learn more about that when we install Python. So I'm excited to show you that in the next section, for sure. It's easily extended by adding new modules implemented in a compiled language such as C or C++. Can also be embedded into an application to provide a programmable interface. Runs anywhere, including Mac OS, Windows, Linux, and Unix, with unofficial builds also available for Android and iOS. It's a free software in two senses. It doesn't cost anything to download or use Python or to include it in your application. Python can also be freely modified and redistributed because while the language is copyrighted, it's available under an open source license, which is huge because the idea is open source is awesome, is all I'm going to say. All right. Some programming language features of Python are: a variety of basic data types are available: numbers, floating point, complex and unlimited length integers, strings, both ASCII and Unicode, lists, and dictionaries. Python supports object-oriented programming with classes and multiple inheritances. Code can be grouped into modules and packages. The language supports raising and catching exceptions, resulting in cleaner error handling. This is crucial because my experience with other languages is there's a ton of errors and the handling of it is horrible, okay? Data types are strongly and dynamically typed, mixing incompatible types Example, attempting to add a string and a number causes an exception to be raised. So errors are caught sooner. Okay? Python contains advanced programming features such as generators and list comprehensions. Python's automatic memory management frees you from having to manually allocate and free memory in your code. So it also optimizes your code quickly and efficiently. And so it's self-efficient, okay, is the best word that I can come up with Python, okay? Now, getting Python, and we're going to dive deeper into this in the next section, but let's just talk a little bit here. Next, install Python 3 interpreter on your computer. This is the program that reads Python programs and carries out their instructions. You need it before you can do any Python programming. Mac and Linux distributions may include an outdated version of Python 2, but you should install an updated one, Python 3. Okay, so we are going to install this in section 3. All right, so don't worry about that right now. Learning Python. Next, read a tutorial and try some simple experiments with your new Python interpreter. Okay, so we're going to dive deeper into that in a later video, so you don't need to do that right now, okay? All right, so here's the other thing. So these are just reference guides for some sites offer in-browser coding for those who want to learn Python. So you can go to these different sites for being able to learn Python in the browser. However, I don't want you to do that. I want you to work with me, download the program, and then run it that way so that you really learn how to do it. Okay, there's nothing wrong with working in a browser, but it's better to work offline first so you completely understand. All right, now, if you need help, here you go. A beginner guide, help for mailing lists and new groups. Most Python books will include an introduction to the language, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so this is kind of a quick overview of some help that you can get, but here's what I want to talk about down here. Okay, so you have a complete list of beginner guide pages. So remember, when you're done with this course, you can come back here and look through all these if you have questions or if you want to learn more. Always be learning. Don't ever settle on, say, oh, Josh, I did your course. I'm a master in Python now. No, the idea of this course is to take you from beginner to advanced and then help you go above and beyond that by giving you the resources outside of the course to expand your knowledge. Okay, that's the key. All right. Python style checker. Okay. Looking for particular Python module or applications. Okay, so this is where you can look for that. Want to contribute? Python is a product of Python Software Foundation, a nonprofit organization. You can donate. You can report bugs. You can contribute. Announce your module or application. Propose changes. And then if you have any questions, are not sure where to report it, check out where do I report this page. So I'm going to go there right now. I'm going to open this link in a new tab here. And they have raise an issue. So they have the Python issue tracker. And then vulnerabilities, problem with python.org mailing lists, job board, documentation bug, and then infrastructure. Okay, so this is where you can report things if there's issues that you see. They have all the information right here. So again, summary, but you get the idea. Now, let's talk about the Python FAQs, okay? Because I believe this is the most important part of the documentation. So with this, you have an overview or an index, and you have general Python FAQ, programming FAQ, design and history, library extension, extending, embedding, Python on Windows, graphic user interface or GUI, and then why is Python installed on my computer? Okay, so general Python FAQ. What is Python? What is Python Software Foundation? Are there copyright restrictions on the use of Python? Why was Python created? What is Python good for? How does Python version numbering scheme work? Etc. Okay, so you can get general information here. So, I mean, some of this is like information about why it's called the way it is, and etc. So you can read these questions here. And again, if you have general questions, this is where you can start. And this will get you kind of introduced to Python. And then from there, you can go back and we can look at the, let me go back here. I'm going to go to documentations again. I'll go back to Python FAQs. And you have general Python FAQ there. Then we have programming. So if I open this link in a new tab, you can see general questions here. So is there a source code level debugger with breakpoints? Core language, numbers and strings, performance, sequence, objects, modules. Okay. So again, this covers a broad brush or scope of programming FAQ. So general questions and etc. Okay. Then we have design and history. Okay. Same thing. There's a ton of questions here with a ton of answers. Okay. So they have terrific documentation for this because this will get you started. Okay. Then we have library and extension FAQ. So with this, we have general library questions, common tasks, threads, input and output, network, internet programming, databases, and mathematics and numerics. Okay. So with this, you can just look at these and find simple answers. And again, if the questions are not here, send me a question for sure. Okay. I want to reiterate that I'm not trying to run you off and say, don't ask me any questions. That's not what I'm doing. I just want you to understand that there's a lot of documentation on their website and you should look there first because generally the common frequently asked questions are frequently asked and it's based on beginners and intermediates and advanced programmers as well. And they're general questions that people ask all the time from all levels. So that's the point. So here we have extending and embedding. And then they have general questions here. Okay. Now, again, I'm not going to get deep into this because I'll be here for a month reading all that information, but I want you to know where to go. Okay. Python on Windows. So if I open this link in a new tab, how do I run a Python program under Windows? It's not necessarily a straightforward question. If you're already familiar with running programs from Windows command line, then everything will seem obvious. Otherwise, you might need a little more guidance. Okay, so it dives into how you run a Python program under Windows. Okay, now if you don't understand command line or command prompt, I should say, in Windows, then you could follow this guide. And once we talk about, because we're going to cover basic command line, I'm going to show you later on all about that. I'll talk all about that in a later video. I'll talk more in depth on this. So I don't want to confuse you right now. Again, I just want to cover the summary of the documentation so you understand. But you can see that they have different and more advanced questions on different areas. So with Python on Windows, it's a more advanced question for a beginner, but it doesn't mean that you can't figure it out. Or send me a question and say, how do I do this? I'll say, okay, you do this. Okay. Graphic user interface. So with this, we have what platforms, toolkits exist for Python. Okay. And then they tell you what they are. Okay. And then they have a variety of them here. All right. And so what is graphical user interface? I'm just going to go over that real quick. So graphical user interface is a visual interface. Basically what it is when you're programming, a lot of people use terminal. Or for Windows, they would use command line or command prompt. And on Linux, they would use terminal as well. And basically what it is it's this. If I open up my terminal, I'll show you what it looks like. Okay. So this is what most people look at when they're writing software or writing a website. So there's no graphical user interface here. It's just text. And that's how most programmers are because they're looking at text all the time. So they just use this to run everything. Now, the reason why it's this way is because when Windows started out, they were using MS-DOS. And MS-DOS was this. It was just command line. That's all it was. They didn't add the graphical user interface until I believe the early 90s. Don't hold me to that, but basically the graphical user interface or graphic user interface is you're going from command line or terminal to an interface that's more appealing and easier to navigate. Okay. Why is Python installed on my computer? Okay. So Python is a programming language. It's used for many different applications. It's used in some high schools and colleges, okay, etc. Can I delete Python? Why is Python installed on my machine? Okay. Well, Python isn't installed on your machine yet, but I will show you how to install it, and then I will also give you guidance on how to uninstall it if you really need that, okay? So if you have a question about that, just send me a question on that, and I can assist you with that. All right, so that is the beginner documentation. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.